The morning mist clung to the Montana mountains like a silk veil, transforming the landscape into something almost alien. Thomas Reed adjusted his camera lens, scanning the valley below from his hidden position in the rocky outcrop. For 3 weeks, he'd been tracking unusual animal movements in the area, following reports of strange lights and unexplained phenomena that had the local wildlife behaving erratically. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, casting long shadows across the frost-covered ground. Thomas checked his equipment one last time. The motion sensors he'd placed throughout the valley had been triggering randomly for days, but he'd yet to capture anything substantial on camera. As a veteran wildlife photographer, he'd learned that patience was often rewarded with the most extraordinary shots. A low vibration rumbled through the earth, subtle at first but growing steadily stronger. Thomas steadied himself against a boulder, his heart racing as he watched a section of the morning mist begin to swirl and part. Through his viewfinder, he caught glimpses of something massive moving through the trees, something that defied every natural law he knew. The creature that emerged into the clearing stood nearly 15 feet tall, its body a seamless blend of crystalline structures and fluid organic matter. It moved with impossible grace for its size, each step precise and deliberate. Its form reminded Thomas of a praying mantis crossed with a horse, but the comparison fell short of capturing its true alien nature. The being's surface seemed to shift and ripple, reflecting the morning light in patterns that made his eyes water. Thomas's fingers trembled as he pressed the shutter button, the camera's quiet click sounding thunderous in the stillness. The creature's head snapped toward him, though he could detect no obvious eyes or sensory organs. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as photographer and alien regarded each other across the clearing. Then the air itself seemed to vibrate with a deep, resonant tone that Thomas felt in his bones. The alien being took a step toward him, and he noticed something he'd missed before: it was injured. A section of its crystalline structure was fractured, leaking a luminescent fluid that seemed to evaporate upon touching the ground. Every instinct screamed at Thomas to run, but something held him in place. The creature's movements weren't aggressive, they were cautious, almost hesitant. As it drew closer, the resonant tone changed, becoming more complex, almost musical. Thomas lowered his camera slowly, his mind racing. The being stopped a few yards away, its head tilting in what seemed like curiosity. "You're hurt," Thomas found himself saying aloud, though he knew the words meant nothing to the creature. To his amazement, the alien responded with a modulation in its tone, and suddenly Thomas's mind was flooded with images: a vast starship, a desperate escape, pursuit by shadowy figures, and pain. The mental contact was overwhelming, sending him to his knees. In the distance, a helicopter's rotor broke the morning silence. The alien's posture changed instantly, becoming rigid with what Thomas could only interpret as fear. The sound grew closer, accompanied by the rumble of heavy vehicles. Government vehicles, Thomas realized with a sinking feeling. Someone else had been tracking the strange phenomena in these mountains. Without conscious thought, Thomas made a decision that would change his life forever. "This way," he said, gesturing toward a hidden trail that led to an old ranger station he used as a base camp. The alien hesitated for just a moment before following, its injured form moving with surprising speed despite its wound. As they disappeared into the forest, Thomas caught glimpses of black SUVs appearing on the mountain road below. He knew he was probably committing several federal crimes, but something told him this was bigger than bureaucracy or national security. The alien had shown him fragments of something terrible approaching Earth, something that made his decision feel like the only possible choice. The ranger station came into view, a sturdy log cabin partially hidden by towering pines. Thomas quickly disabled the solar-powered security system and led the alien inside. The being had to crouch to fit through the door, its crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the cabin's interior. As Thomas secured the building, his mind raced with questions. Why was this creature here? What was it running from? And most importantly, what would happen when those government vehicles inevitably tracked them to this location? The alien's resonant tone filled the cabin, and more images flooded Thomas's mind. this time clearer, more focused. He saw vast armadas of ships, worlds torn apart by weapons he couldn't comprehend, and a desperate race to prevent the same fate from befalling Earth. The sound of vehicles approaching pulled Thomas from the vision. He peered through a gap in the window shutters, watching as dust clouds rose from the mountain road. They had maybe minutes before company arrived. The alien's tone changed again, and Thomas understood with startling clarity, this wasn't just about hiding a fugitive alien. He was now part of something much bigger, a cosmic chess game where Earth's future hung in the balance. Thunder rolled across the sky, but when Thomas looked up, he saw no clouds, only a dark shape moving behind the morning mist, far too large to be any human aircraft. Whatever was hunting his alien visitor had arrived, and Thomas had a feeling the cabin wouldn't stay a sanctuary for long. The massive shape in the sky passed overhead, its shadow darkening the cabin like an artificial eclipse. Thomas held his breath, watching as the alien visitor pressed itself against the far wall, its crystalline form dimming to almost complete darkness. The being's resonant tone had dropped to a barely perceptible vibration, but Thomas could still feel the fear radiating from it. Heavy footsteps crunched on the gravel outside, accompanied by the distinct sound of weapons being readied. Thomas's heart pounded as he quickly pulled up the floorboards beneath his equipment cabinet, revealing a hidden cellar he used to store his more expensive photography gear. He gestured frantically at the alien, who seemed to understand immediately, folding its massive form into the space with impossible fluidity. Just as Thomas replaced the floorboards, the cabin door burst open. A team of heavily armed individuals in black tactical gear poured in, followed by a woman in a pristine white lab coat. Her sharp features and calculating gaze gave her an almost predatory appearance. Dr. Isabella Vale, Department of Extraterrestrial Research and Defense, she announced, holding up an ID badge. And you must be Thomas Reed. We've been monitoring your photography blog for weeks now. Those unusual atmospheric phenomena you've been documenting. They're far more interesting than your followers realize. Thomas straightened up, trying to appear casual despite the rifle barrels pointed at him. I'm just a wildlife photographer. If you've seen my blog, you know that. Dr. Vale's smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Reed, we both know you've seen something here today. Something that doesn't belong on this planet. Helping to conceal an alien entity is a serious federal offense. Before Thomas could respond, a new sound cut through the tension, a high-pitched whine that made everyone wince. The source wasn't the hidden alien below, but something outside. Dr. Vale's expression changed from confident to concerned as she pressed her earpiece. Report, she barked. The radio crackled with panic and static. Multiple contacts, Doctor. They're not, these aren't like the first one. They're, oh God. The cabin windows exploded inward as something massive swept past, sending everyone diving for cover. Through the settling dust, Thomas saw shapes moving outside, angular, aggressive forms that bore little resemblance to the crystalline being he'd hidden. These new creatures seemed to be made of shifting shadows and sharp edges, their movements precise and predatory. Defensive positions. Dr. Vale shouted, drawing a sleek weapon that looked nothing like standard military issue. These are the Void Hunters. They're what our friend down there is running from. Thomas stared at her. You knew. You knew what was coming. We've been tracking their movements across the galaxy, she replied grimly. Your crystalline friend isn't just a refugee, Mr. Reed. It's a guardian, one of the last of its kind. And those things out there? They're the reason we don't hear from other civilizations in space. They're the silence in the void. The cabin shook as something slammed against the walls. The hidden alien's resonant tone suddenly surged, and Thomas's mind filled with urgent images, a vast network of crystalline beings spreading knowledge and peace across the galaxies, then the arrival of the Void Hunters, systematic destruction, worlds going dark one by one. They're not just hunting, Thomas realized aloud. They're exterminating. Wiping out any civilization that achieves interstellar travel. Dr. Vale nodded grimly. The Guardian chose Earth for a reason, Mr. Reed. We're on the cusp of faster-than-light travel. Another decade, maybe two, and we'll join the galactic community. Unless. Another impact rocked the cabin. Through the broken windows, Thomas caught glimpses of the tactical team engaging the shadow creatures, their weapons seeming to have little effect. The air filled with an otherworldly screech that made his teeth ache. The floorboards burst upward as the crystalline alien emerged, its form now glowing with intense energy despite its wounds. The being's resonant tone changed, becoming something complex and powerful that made the very air vibrate. Dr. Vale's eyes widened. It's attempting to establish a full neural link, she breathed. Mr. Reed, your previous contact with it makes you the ideal conduit. If you accept the connection, we might have a chance. But I warn you, this kind of alien neural interface, it changes people. There's no going back. Thomas looked between the chaos outside and the glowing alien before him. Through the broken windows, he could see more shadow shapes descending from the massive ship above. The world was about to change forever, and he was standing at the crossroads. What do I need to do? He asked. The alien's tone shifted again, and Thomas felt something brush against his consciousness, not just images this time, but emotions, knowledge, purpose. The being was offering him something profound, a partnership that would blur the lines between human and alien, between student and teacher. Focus on the resonance, Dr. Vale instructed, her voice distant as Thomas felt his mind expanding. Let it. Her words cut off as one of the shadow creatures burst through the cabin wall, its form seeming to absorb the very light around it. The crystalline being moved with startling speed, interposing itself between the threat and the humans. As the two aliens clashed, the neural connection suddenly snapped into place, and Thomas understood everything. The Guardians weren't just refugees or peacekeepers. They were custodians of something far more precious, the collective knowledge and cultural heritage of thousands of civilizations wiped out by the Void Hunters. And now, in this remote cabin in the Montana wilderness, they were making their last stand. Thomas felt power surge through him as the neural link strengthened. The crystalline being's knowledge flooded his mind, advanced physics, forgotten technologies, and most importantly, the key to fighting the Void Hunters. But with each passing second, more of the shadow creatures were converging on their location. They needed to move, to find a place where they could mount a proper defense. The neural link blazed through Thomas's consciousness like wildfire, transforming his understanding of reality with each passing second. Ancient knowledge from countless civilizations cascaded through his mind, mathematical theorems that could reshape space itself, technologies that defied physics as humans understood it, and most critically, the true nature of their enemy. We need to move, Dr. Vale shouted over the chaos, firing her exotic weapon at another shadow creature attempting to breach the cabin. There's a research facility 20 miles north. If we can reach it. No, Thomas interrupted, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that made everyone pause. I know where we need to go. Through his neural link with the Guardian, he had accessed memories of something hidden deep in the mountains, placed there eons ago. There's an ancient outpost, left by the first Guardian expedition to Earth. It's our only chance. The crystalline being, whose true name Thomas now knew as a complex harmony impossible for human vocal cords to reproduce, moved with renewed purpose. Its wounds were slowly healing, the fractured sections knitting together with geometric precision. Through their connection, Thomas felt its approval of his plan. Dr. Vale's tactical team had formed a defensive perimeter around the cabin, but they were losing ground. The Void Hunters moved like living shadows, their forms seeming to bend reality around them. Conventional weapons passed through them harmlessly, while Dr. Vale's advanced technology merely slowed them down. The outpost is 15 miles southeast, in a cavern system beneath Thunder Peak, Thomas explained quickly. But we'll never make it by ground. The hunters have us surrounded. A smile crossed Dr. Vale's face as she pressed her earpiece. That's why I called for backup. Echo Team, commence Operation Bright Hammer. The morning sky suddenly erupted with light as 3 sleek aircraft appeared, their design unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. They opened fire on the Void Hunters' positions with weapons that seemed to bend light itself, creating corridors of pure energy that even the shadow creatures couldn't pass through. Prototype photon cannons, Dr. Vale explained as she ushered them toward the cabin's back door. Turns out darkness can't exist where there's enough light. We've been preparing for this longer than you think. They rushed from the cabin toward a waiting transport vehicle, a heavily modified military truck that hummed with exotic energy. The Guardian moved with surprising agility despite its size, its crystalline form shifting and compressing to fit inside the vehicle's cargo area. Through their link, Thomas felt its appreciation for human adaptability. As they sped down the mountain road, Thomas's enhanced consciousness processed information at an overwhelming rate. The Guardian's memories showed him the truth about Earth's history, how the planet had been seeded with hidden technologies and monitoring stations by the Guardians millennia ago, preparing for the day when humanity would need to take its place among the galactic community. The Void Hunters, he said aloud, piecing together the fragments of knowledge, they're not just destroying civilizations. They're implementing a quarantine. They believe intelligent life itself is a cosmic disease that needs to be contained. Dr. Vale nodded grimly from the driver's seat as she navigated the treacherous mountain roads. We intercepted some of their communications. They see themselves as the universe's immune system. Any species that develops interstellar travel capabilities becomes a target. They believe they're preventing the spread of consciousness across the cosmos. The transport shuddered as something massive passed overhead. Through the neural link, Thomas felt the Guardian's alarm. The shadow of the Void Hunters' capital ship was following them, its presence distorting the very fabric of reality beneath it. They're not just hunting anymore, Thomas realized, the knowledge coming to him through the link. They're preparing to sterilize the entire region. Once they realize they can't capture the Guardian, they'll attempt to eliminate all witnesses and evidence. How large an area are we talking about? Dr. Vale asked, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The entire mountain range. Maybe the whole state. Thomas closed his eyes, accessing more of the shared knowledge. They'll create a temporal anomaly, essentially erasing this section of spacetime and replacing it with nothing. The Guardian's tone shifted to something urgent, and new information flooded Thomas's mind. The outpost, he gasped. It's not just a hiding place. It's a beacon. If we can activate it, it will signal the remaining Guardian fleets scattered across the galaxy. Earth will be brought under their protection. And if we fail? One of the tactical team members asked. Thomas looked out the window at the darkening sky, where more Void Hunter ships were appearing. Then Montana becomes a warning to the rest of the planet. A dead zone that will make Chernobyl look like a park. The transport's engine roared as Dr. Vale pushed it to its limits. Behind them, the air itself seemed to be turning black as the Void Hunters pursued in force. The Guardian's crystalline form pulsed with energy, using what strength it had recovered to create a protective field around the vehicle. Through the neural link, Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settling over him. The Guardian had chosen Earth for a reason, not just because humanity was approaching interstellar travel capability, but because something in human nature made them uniquely suited to resist the Void Hunters' ideology. Where the Hunters saw consciousness as a disease, humans saw it as a gift to be shared and celebrated. Thunder Peak loomed ahead, its surface marked with what Thomas now recognized as ancient Guardian symbols, invisible to normal human perception. The outpost was waiting, dormant but ready. The question was whether they could reach it before the Void Hunters unleashed their ultimate weapon. Time was running out, and the fate of not just Montana, but potentially Earth itself, hung in the balance. Thunder Peak rose before them like a sentinel, its jagged face hiding secrets older than human civilization. The transport vehicle skidded to a halt at the base of a sheer cliff face, its engine smoking from the strain of the desperate race. Through the neural link, Thomas felt the Guardian's recognition. they were close to the outpost entrance, but the real challenge was just beginning. The sky above had turned an impossible shade of violet black, the Void Hunter's capital ship now directly overhead. The air crackled with otherworldly energy as reality itself began to warp around them. Dr. Vale's team quickly established a defensive perimeter, their advanced weapons creating a hemisphere of pure light around the group. The entrance is hidden, Thomas said, his consciousness merged with the Guardian's ancient memories. It requires a specific frequency to. He stopped as the crystalline being moved forward, its form resonating with a complex harmonic that made the air shimmer. A section of the rock face simply ceased to exist, revealing a corridor that seemed to be made of living crystal. Move! Dr. Vale ordered as shadows began to coalesce around their position. The team rushed into the corridor, the Guardian taking up the rear. As soon as they were inside, the entrance sealed itself, cutting off the sounds of the Void Hunter's assault. The passageway illuminated itself as they advanced, responding to the Guardian's presence. Through their link, Thomas understood that the entire facility was constructed using technology that blended the physical and the conscious, responding to thought and intention as much as physical interaction. "This is incredible," Dr. Vale breathed, studying the crystalline walls. "We found fragments of Guardian technology before, but nothing like this. This facility is completely intact." "It was waiting," Thomas explained, the knowledge flowing through him. The Guardians knew that eventually, humanity would need to make a choice, join the greater galactic community and face the Void Hunters, or remain isolated and safe in ignorance. They left this outpost as a test site. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that defied normal geometry. Crystalline structures spiraled in impossible patterns, creating spaces that seemed to fold in on themselves. At the center stood a pillar of pure light that stretched up into darkness. "The beacon," Thomas said, approaching the pillar. The Guardian moved with him, its resonance harmonizing with the chamber's energy. "But it's not just a signal device. It's a key to something much larger." Through the neural link, understanding bloomed. The outpost wasn't just meant to call for help, it was designed to awaken something dormant within the human species itself. The Guardians had seen potential in humanity's unique combination of adaptability and empathy, characteristics that made them natural allies in the fight against the Void Hunter's nihilistic mission. The chamber shuddered as something massive impacted the mountain above. Dr. Vale checked her tactical display, her expression grim. "They're trying to bore through the rock. These chambers might be protected, but the mountain itself is still vulnerable. How long do we need?" Before Thomas could answer, the Guardian's tone shifted to one of alarm. Images flooded his mind, the Void Hunters weren't just trying to break in. They were preparing to initiate their temporal weapon, preparing to erase this entire region from existence. "We don't have time for a gradual activation," Thomas realized. "The beacon needs to be powered by consciousness itself, a bridge between human awareness and Guardian knowledge. That's why they chose me, why they created the neural link. But doing it quickly, without preparation." He looked at Dr. Vale. "It could burn out my mind completely." The chamber trembled again, more violently this time. Through the crystalline walls, they could see dark energy beginning to seep through, the Void Hunter's influence corrupting the ancient Guardian technology. Dr. Vale gripped his shoulder. "There has to be another way. The risk is necessary," Thomas finished. He turned to the Guardian, feeling its concern through their link. "You've shown me what's at stake. Not just Earth, but the very idea that consciousness deserves to exist and spread throughout the universe. The Void Hunters want to quarantine awareness itself, to make the cosmos safe by making it empty." The Guardian's crystalline form pulsed with emotion, pride, sadness, hope. Through their connection, Thomas felt its ancient wisdom and the weight of countless civilizations lost to the Hunter's crusade. This moment, this choice, had been millennia in the making. "Do it," Thomas said firmly, stepping toward the pillar of light. "Show me how." The Guardian moved forward, its resonance building to a crescendo that made the very air vibrate. The tactical team and Dr. Vale were forced to step back as energy began to arc between Thomas, the Guardian, and the central pillar. Through their expanding link, Thomas felt the full scope of what they were attempting. The beacon wouldn't just signal the Guardian fleet, it would awaken latent potential within every human being in range, creating a network of consciousness that the Void Hunters couldn't simply erase. As the energy built to impossible levels, Thomas caught a final glimpse of Dr. Vale's face, saw her understanding of what this moment meant. Then the light consumed everything, and Thomas felt his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical form, merging with something vast and ancient and powerful. The transformation had begun, and with it, humanity's first true step into a larger universe. The only question was whether Thomas's mind would survive the process long enough to see what they would become. Light exploded outward from Thunder Peak, piercing the Void Hunter's artificial darkness like a newborn star. Thomas's consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his physical form, merging with the Guardian's ancient knowledge and the Outpost's vast network of crystalline technology. He was everywhere and nowhere, his awareness spreading through the mountain like roots through soil. Through this expanded perception, he could see the Void Hunter's capital ship hovering above, not just its physical form, but its true nature. It was a wound in reality, a vessel designed to unmake existence itself. Its weapons were already charging, preparing to erase this corner of Montana from the timeline. But Thomas could also see something else now, the hidden potential sleeping in every human mind within range. The Guardian's gift wasn't just knowledge, it was evolution itself, carefully seeded throughout human history, waiting for this moment to bloom. In the chamber below, Dr. Vale and her team watched in awe as Thomas's physical form began to crystallize, taking on properties of the Guardian's own structure. The pillar of light had become a tornado of energy, reaching up through the mountain toward the Void Hunter's ship. "It's working," Dr. Vale breathed, checking readings on her tablet. "The beacon's signal is propagating through the noosphere, the sphere of human consciousness itself. Every mind within 100 miles is changing." The Void Hunters sensed the threat. Their ship unleashed its temporal weapon, a beam of pure entropy designed to unwind the fabric of space-time. But as it struck the mountain, something unprecedented happened. The beam scattered, reflected by millions of awakening minds linked together through the Guardian's technology. Thomas, Guardian, humanity spoke as one. You sought to quarantine consciousness, to prevent its spread across the cosmos. But consciousness isn't a disease, it's the universe's way of knowing itself. And humanity's gift isn't just awareness, but the ability to share it, to help it grow and evolve. The chamber's crystals resonated with the truth of these words. Through their expanded awareness, they could feel people across the region awakening to new potential. Ranchers, shop owners, schoolchildren, all suddenly connected to something vast and wonderful, their minds opening to understanding that transcended ordinary human limitations. The Void Hunter's ship launched a second attack, more desperate now. But the networked consciousness of humanity had created something new, a shield of pure thought and will, strengthened by the Guardian's ancient wisdom. The temporal beam struck this barrier and shattered, its entropy scattered harmlessly into the void. High above, the dark ship shuddered as points of light began appearing across the sky, the Guardian fleet, responding to the beacon at last. But they weren't coming as saviors. They were coming as witnesses to humanity's first steps into a larger reality. In the chamber, Thomas's crystallized form began to shift, reconstructing itself. The transformation had changed him permanently. He was neither fully human nor Guardian now, but something new. Through him, the barrier between species had been broken, proving that consciousness could evolve beyond its original bounds. Dr. Vale stepped forward as Thomas reformed, his new body a hybrid of organic matter and living crystal. How do you feel?" "Connected," Thomas answered, his voice carrying harmonics that made the chamber's crystals sing. "I can feel them retreating. The Void Hunters understand now, humanity isn't just another species to be quarantined. We're the proof that consciousness can transcend its limitations, that different forms of awareness can merge and grow together. The Guardian's form pulsed with approval, its own consciousness now permanently linked with Thomas's. Through their connection, they shared the vision of what was coming, humanity taking its place among the galactic community not just as another spacefaring species, but as living proof that evolution didn't end with physical form. The ability to share and merge consciousness, to grow beyond original limitations, this was humanity's true gift to the cosmos. Above Thunder Peak, the Void Hunter's ship began its retreat, its dark form diminishing against the brightening sky. The Guardian fleet took up positions around Earth, not as protectors, but as partners in what would come next. What happens now? Dr. Vale asked, looking between Thomas and the Guardian. Now, Thomas said, his crystalline features catching the light, we begin the real work. Humanity is awake in a way it's never been before. The people who were in range of the beacon, they'll be the first wave, but not the last. The ability to share consciousness, to evolve beyond our original design, it's spreading. The Void Hunters tried to quarantine awareness to keep the universe safe, but they never understood. Safety isn't found in isolation. It's found in connection, in growth, in the willingness to become more than we are. The Guardian's resonance filled the chamber with a song of triumph and hope. Through their link, Thomas saw the future unfolding, humanity reaching out to the stars not with ships first, but with minds. The technology they would develop would follow their consciousness, not lead it. Earth would become a beacon itself, proving that evolution didn't end with physical form, that consciousness could grow and change and merge in ways that transcended simple biology. As the sun rose over Montana, its light caught the crystalline structures now growing from Thunder Peak, monuments to the moment when humanity took its first real step into the cosmic community. The Void Hunters had sought to contain consciousness, to prevent its spread across the universe. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of something they never imagined, a species that could bridge the gap between all forms of awareness, proving that the universe's greatest strength lay not in quarantine, but in connection. Thomas stood at the entrance of the outpost, his transformed body reflecting the morning light in rainbow patterns. The Guardian fleet hung in the sky like new stars, and below, he could feel the awakened minds of humanity beginning to understand their new reality. The story of consciousness spreading across the cosmos hadn't ended. It had only just begun.